right, Gundam Maniacs, welcome to the Gundam Explained show. It is July 6th, and I haven't been able to hear it because I'm on the production side, but I try to make it where there was like music fading out as I came in, so I'll listen to it later and maybe give myself a high five. Yeah, but no, we got a cool show today. I'm of course your host, Adam Blue. With me, as always, is Steven from Midnight Hatter. Steven, how you doing?
Hanging in there, buddy. How you?
Doing good, actually doing really good, because it's weird. I feel like there's this weird energy because we've got another Adam here. And yeah. I mean, another Adam. It's like a Highlander situation, maybe? I don't know, but...
Look, I go by AMAC all the time. You can call me Mac. I think that's perfectly fine.
Oh, okay, good to know. Then, yeah, the energy is now, I guess, properly partitioned.
Don't have to cut one of your heads off.
Yeah, there you go. But no, AMAC from Fetty Scum. How you doing, man?
Hello. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, yeah, thanks for being on. I think I was saying earlier, it gives my show a little bit more credibility. When I first was getting into Gundam, and this was like 2018, because I first discovered it, and I remember I was searching online, what are some cool resources online? People do shows, podcasts, and I came across Fetty Scum, and I was like, man, this must be a big deal if there's this like high production value, like ongoing like series. And I just thought that was crazy. Well,
the compliments.
Well, hey, no, it's true. It's really cool. And so that kind of also that helped me understand like that Gundam is a real thing, that people value it so much that like they will make it part of their lives in a big way. And I think that's all why we're all here. So
I mean, I'm super excited about today's show as well, because being a fan of Fetty Scum for as long as I've been, and everyone always, when I started doing YouTube, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna try and make a 5e version of a Gundam RPG. Everyone's like, oh, is that what Fetty Scum uses? And I was like, no. but I appreciate you thinking that I created something that they're using, because AMAC's system is far more sophisticated.
No.
Well, we'll probably dive into.
I have people pop into my comments saying, "Oh, hey, do you use Gundam 5e?" And I have to say, "Nope, I actually don't. Sadly, sorry."
No, because you're more creative than that.
Well, yeah, we'll probably dive into that a little more, because I know Steven has, you guys know, everyone that joins Steven's show on Wednesdays with myself, like Steven is more in that realm of RPG. So I bet we'll get into some deep discussion here soon. So yeah, the majority of the show, we're going to just talk Gundam with AMAC, and then maybe touch a little bit on some news of some cool Gundam reveals that happened recently, like with the shows and all that. And then maybe our takes on Witch from Mercury now that that's over with. So, and then real quick, I wanted to make an announcement. I keep forgetting to do this. I'm actually going to be at the GalaxyCon in North Carolina at the end of the month. So if anyone happens to be out there, hit me up, and I would love to meet up. I think there's going to be a few of us already meeting up. We might even go to the Hangar 18 hobby shop too. So just wanted to throw that out there. I think that'll be very cool. But yeah, to start, so AMAC. I like that name, actually. Now, is Mac for Macross?
No, it's my part of my last name, which is falsely assumed to be Macintosh.
Oh, okay. Okay, there you go. Well, no, that's cool. So these are the questions I usually ask guests when they're on, but how did you get into Gundam? When did that first happen?
So it was very early. At school on the playground, my friends were playing Gundam. They're make-believing that they were mobile suits fighting each other and such. I did not have cable at the time, so I had no idea what they were talking about. So I was kind of left out until I bought a PS2 game called Zeonic Front. Sadly, they were all watching Wing at the time and had no idea what I was talking about when I started talking about my Gundam.
That's pretty awesome.
We did some exchanging of information, though, and they all kind of turned into pretty diehard UC fans by the end of it, which was nice to see.
That's actually pretty awesome. I would love to be on the playground and someone's playing Gundam. I mean, when I was on the playground, I think it was when like Power Rangers first came out, but it was like right I think I was in 5th grade. So like, I remember I was playing Power Rangers, and then someone was like, "Are you playing Power Rangers?" I'm like, "No." But then like we were playing Power Rangers later and just wouldn't tell anybody. I love it. But so did you get into the video games after that? Like, were you always playing the video games that came out?
Yeah. So shortly after I played Zionic Front, and as a child somehow beat it, because I revisited that game like not too long ago, and that game's kind of hard. So I have no idea how I managed to get through it as a kid. Just some ungodly determination. But Federation versus Xeon was another one, and Encounters in Space, all PS2 titles that I really loved. Another friend had Journey to Jaburo. I didn't care for that one as much, nearly, for obvious reasons.
That one's tough.
Now as an adult.
Yeah, that one's tough. In fact, I played Encounters in Space for the first time, and I thought that holds up. That was a lot of fun. Yeah,
it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would you say is your favorite game from that PS2 generation of Gundam games?
Game as a whole, I think Zionic Front. Now, in terms of specific parts that I enjoyed the most, the Ace story modes of Encounters in Space were really cool, because for a while that was some of the only like deep dives you could do into like specific Ace pilots. As far as I knew as a Western fan, I was like, "Oh, I've never heard of this guy."
Well, see, and we never knew how good we had it during those PS2 days, where we would get all of these Gundam games that were localized into English. But now you're hard pressed to find any English Gundam game.
Yeah, that's interesting, because the only Gundam game I played, and I just realized it a few years ago that it was Gundam, was the Rise from the Ashes on Dreamcast. Like because I like mechs, and so I was like, oh cool, a mech game on Dreamcast. And by then most Dreamcast games didn't have the jank that would still be found in the PlayStation era. Like Dreamcast was a very refined system for some reason. And so it was easy for me to get into, and I've been playing it recently and it holds up. But yeah, it's weird how I'll go back and revisit these, or not even revisit, I'd visit these old PlayStation games I never played, and it's hit or miss. Like the ones that seem janky, or it's more of, I think they're just hard and they're purposely punishing, and it's wanting you to take your time. And I think there's something cool about that is missing today in a way. And yeah, there's like that Missing Link game that came out on PS3 that didn't even get released in the US, but it's a badass game. Did you happen to play imported games? Were you getting that deep?
I've imported a few of the Super Robot Wars and things like that.
Okay.
But that's more recently.
Yeah.
I've also played a little bit of Gihren's Greed, horribly, I might add.
Is that a good one? Because I keep hearing about it, but
it's a how to describe Gihren's Greed.
Oh,
Everyone
man,
has
a controversial take.
Oh, it is. Everyone has an idea of what Gihren's Greed is, and I guarantee you, when you play it, that is not what Gihren's Greed is.
Interesting.
Everyone's opinion is very, very much informed by these old threads where someone would play Gihren's Greed and let people in the thread choose options, when really it was basically just text role play, and they were just kind of following a rough guide and probably not playing the game.
Goes back to that Gundam disinformation that you and I talked about.
Yeah. The actual game it's okay. It's fun. It's not as freeform as you would think it is in a lot of ways. And it's really lacking on a lot of quality of life stuff. You're going to be doing a lot of clicking and moving units around one at a time for lots and lots and lots of units, and then spending entire turns just moving forces across the map with no conflict.
Wow. In some ways that sounds fun, but not, because there's sometimes with games I love like the kind of punishing approach in a way to kind of like make, because it then feels rewarding, and sometimes it's hard to really, I think I learned that from playing Souls games. Like I didn't realize how much I love a game that is punishing, but then there's that rewarding feeling near the end. But again, like you said, is it really punishing or the quality of life punishing? It might be a little different.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just intentionally difficult for the sake of, oh, see, it's supposed to be punishing.
Yeah. No, that's cool. So did you get into the Gunpla early on at all? Or at all?
Gunpla was a bit later, high school, college. Wasn't into it much when I was younger. But yeah, no, I build Gunpla on occasion. I mostly paint 40K miniatures.
Oh,
So I really like painting. So
yeah, there's something, and Steven's taught me this. There's something fun about painting minis, like as opposed to so there's these mobile suit ensemble that I've been picking up, and they are like Gunpla because there's a lot of elements on them that are not detailed or painted, and I love going in there and adding the details. There's something to that because I think I'm getting to the point where I realize there's only so many Gunpla I can build to where it's like there's no room. There's just no room. I mean, do you come across that where you're just like, well, there's no place I could put this?
Oh, as you can see, I have plenty of room to put things, I suppose.
I love the Garma portrait, by the way.
Oh yeah, my very small, modest Garma portrait.
That's amazing. Was that custom?
Yes, that was a commission from Moldy Artichoke on Twitter, or Moldy Mold on Tumblr, I think.
Okay, that's
Awesome.
That's pretty cool. And I see you have some manga back there too. Am I seeing that correctly?
I have hold on, I can't see. I have Origin up here on the top, and then some other ones over there.
That's cool.
And Legend of the Galactic Heroes stuff over there.
Now, be honest. Were you as disappointed as I was when the Origin spines didn't create some kind of?
Yes. Yes, I was.
Very frustrating.
Because it looked like they were.
Right. There was.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, speaking of Legends of Galactic Heroes, like I remember so once I got into Gundam, I realized, okay, then I can like anime. And so I watched things like it's mainly the 80s stuff for some reason, like especially the more mature themed stuff. There's like I can't even think off the top of my head. I forget them half the time. But like Maddox, I think was one. Demon City Shinjuku or something like that, and then Wicked City, and then Lily Cat. There's all these like kind of horror, but then I started really getting into, because of Gundam, like the mecha anime. Are there any other mecha anime that you really like?
Well, Legend of Galactic Heroes isn't mecha, but
right.
It's
a
Gundam
sci-fi.
adjacent.
It's like very similar. Yeah.
Everyone treats it as the Gundam graduation course. So once you're done with Gundam, you move on to that. I don't know if that's a fair treatment of it or not.
That happened to me organically, and even though I watched the 80s one for a little bit, I saw that there was a modern one, so then I just jumped to that and loved it. Like to me, that's like top tier, hard sci-fi. Like
D&T. You mean the Dainu Thesis?
Yeah, that one that has like the German subtitle. Yeah, I was watching it. It's either Funimation or Crunchyroll where it was like it would come out and then the dub would come out after that. So I was always waiting for the dub, just because when I'm reading, as much as I feel like my old like cinema days when I was like an artsy cinema freak, I would only, if it had subtitles, it was no dub. It would have to be subtitles. But now it's like I like, especially with anime, the dubs, so I can watch the animation.
Because you miss a lot if you're not, paying attention to what's happening. So it's
Legend of the Galactic Heroes also gives you a lot of info.
Yes.
Anyways, to answer your question about other mecha anime, I Vodums. Or Bottoms.
Yeah, I don't know. I've always just read it. I've never said it out loud.
Right. I always say Votoms, but then I'm like, do I sound like Char saying Tetons?
But let me ask you about Vodums or Vodoms. I started it, and after the first few episodes, I was just like, and then just kind of moved on. Does it get better, or is that just it?
I would say it gets better, yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll continue it.
It's worth hanging in there for.
Okay, good.
Especially for some of their later stuff, but sadly, it's kind of an unloved franchise nowadays.
Yeah.
What are some others?
The slow burns.
Yeah, that's true. Well, like for instance, I'll add real quick. I watched the Starship Troopers anime.
Yeah,
they
that
made.
inspired a lot of people to do different things.
Yeah, and it's like it wasn't amazing, but it wasn't bad. It was more very intriguing in terms of the different things it was showing and doing. And then there's this other one, the one that Steven told me about, like Vifam. Yeah, that is really good. I don't know. Have you seen Vifam?
I have not, no.
Yeah, that one was hard to track down because I would never see it anywhere until he pointed it out to me. And it is Tomino written, and it's just like a Gundam thing. Like where at the beginning there's just violence everywhere.
Now the art style is a little closer to like, your kind of Astro Boy style. More youth appeal than a Gundam, but
it's really good. Or any other anime in general that you like. It doesn't have to be mecha or anything.
Monster's a really good one. Solid recommend from there. Berserk 1997 version. That's a really solid one.
Yeah.
You don't like the CG one?
The movies are okay. They're fine. The 2016 Berserk didn't happen. Doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's funny. My brother is a big fan of Berserk, and I can't even get him into Gundam. I've been trying, but I think he's just more into like the horror stuff. Which Berserk on its own, whether it's anime or not, is actually pretty awesome. Like I watched that. I guess 97. You said I don't know what one I watched. He just gave me a playlist. And I watched it, and I was like, "Wow, that's really good."
If he has any kind of taste, it was the 1997 version.
Okay, I think it must be because he's even been buying all the I don't know if they're new or what, the big black hardcover.
They're relatively new. The little collection omnibuses. Yeah.
Is that what it? Oh, okay. Yeah, that's something. There's so much really to get into when I'm still trying to just get into Gundam, and then there's all these other side animes I'll watch every once in a while. But then what got you to start doing the podcast, the Fetty Scum stuff?
So I was working as an applications developer for unmentionable companies.
Okay.
And I was very bored at my day job, and so I started listening to podcasts. And I came across a few actual plays, most noteworthy being The Adventure Zone, who had a big first arc playing D&D 5e, and kind of doing, they largely are credited with popularizing actual plays big time, right before Critical Role kind of took off. So I enjoyed listening to them, and I told my friend Dallas, who we've done projects before in the past, hey, you should listen to this. It's very interesting. He listened to it and came back to me with like, hey, we should do something like this. And I was like, as the forever GM of my group, hesitant to agree. But I had recently re-begun my hyperfixation on Gundam. I've reactivated those brain worms. And so I was like, I'll do it if it's Gundam. So that's basically how it started.
Wow.
We did like 3 or 4 episodes, started to release them, caught up to our backlog really quickly, and weekly recordings from the beginning of season 1 onward almost.
Yeah, and
it was
so that's
very fun experience.
Oh, that's pretty cool, because one thing when it comes to wanting to make content is like being able to instill within yourself the dedication to continue to do it, because it's very easy when you're making content to sometimes fall out of it, even though you really want to, and there's got to be that motivation. Is there anything in particular that kept you to keep doing it? Was it your friends?
Mostly friends. Honestly,
That's cool.
When you're working with friends, it makes it very easy to kind of keep working and keep being creative together on something. If you get burned out, just talking with friends about what you want to do in the future is a very good motivator, at least for me personally.
Okay.
But also, loving the source material, like original Gundam is so near and dear to my heart. I love 0079 so much. So it was a big driving factor as well.
Yeah. So when did you first see 0079? Because I guess you didn't have cable, but you played the games.
So I played the games, and shortly thereafter, I'm not sure how many years, but I was able to get the DVD release of the movies that still had the English dub on them. I think it was a blue box set, kind of shiny. I listened to those, and I was like, "Why don't these sound like the games?" Because I wasn't aware that the Tsunami show existed, which is where they pulled all the fucking lines from.
Omura getting the Gundam.
Yeah, it's interesting how that was a dub that I guess Bandai, after they commissioned that, they decided no, we need to redo the dub, and so like that old stuff is now public domain, which is pretty amazing to think. But
Wild.
So yeah, you said okay, so DVD, and then but that's pretty cool though. So you watch it, and then you and that's what I think is funny with me. I'm in 2018, I'm like, oh, let's watch 0079, and I'm like, whoa, this is amazing for someone that doesn't care for anime. Like, what do you think are some of the qualities that just makes it timeless almost?
Oh, so there's quite a few things that the original series does well. The movie, a little bit less so, because they cut out a lot of the small things. Because the TV series has a lot of time to breathe.
Yeah.
And so you get a very good characterization from all the characters. You have small little things that are just shown here and there that help the world building so much. You have what's another thing that I would say is very unique to it.
And just to give you ideas, I'd say like, for instance, it's like the way the characters are reacting to the world. It's almost like I could relate to how people are responding. Sometimes if their initial reaction is a little mean, even if that's not right, but it's because of what they're thrust into. And how sometimes what UC Gundam does really well is the non-speaking, where it's action that almost tells the story, because it's like real life. Sometimes we don't express ourselves.
Yeah, it's got like a cinematic feel sometimes when you get a close up of a character's face and see them just kind of reacting to something. But yeah, and to add on to that, I would say the interactions with what you might consider the NPC characters. I always go back to that interaction in the 4th episode between Amuro and the older gentleman that like is with his grandson.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much world building just in that conversation, and you get this characterization for a character that's only there for 10 seconds. But, you would never get that from probably even most live action shows.
Yeah, a lot of care into like individual scenes, and also kind of how you were talking about letting action speak. A lot of Tominoisms where people trip and they fumble and they're a little awkward here and there.
Yeah.
It really goes a long way.
Yeah.
And would you say that makes it like kind of one of the ideal sandboxes to play in when you're creating and crafting your own story, within that universe?
Well, 79 was right for that because there had been so much 79 content. The 1 Year War has been vastly explored, and so I had a lot to pull and choose from for the actual play.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy how much we get of 0079. But okay, so then did you happen to then catch Zeta after you first saw 79?
Yeah, once I figured out that I could just buy DVDs, I quickly consumed a lot after that. As things became available, I pretty much bought them as soon as I could.
Yeah, curious.
What was your? Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, what was your like primary shop? Adam and I tend to date ourselves a lot when I talk about like, oh well, I used to go to Sam Goody and buy my Gundam DVDs. What was your like?
God, I can't even remember the name of the website. I think it had an orange color scheme.
Was it where like you wouldn't find them in stores, so you would have to go online?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know. For me, even though I wasn't into anime, I was really into Asian cinema back in the day. Like, so I would go. There was a website called AZNFilms.com, and I would import like all these random. The guy. Oh, I forget. It's been so long. There's this director that made the movie Versus. I don't know if you guys remember the movie Versus. It was like Evil Dead 2, but Japanese. And it was pretty cool. Yeah. It was in the forest, and they had katanas. he went on to make some other interesting films, but yeah, that was an interesting thing because a part of wanting to get into Gundam, especially depending on what time in the timeline it is like, where do you go to find that? Because that's part of what I'm trying to do with this channel is just kind of expose people to more of like, here's all this Gundam stuff that's out there. Like, go get it. Here's how you get it, you know?
Yeah. A lot of us grew up in an age where it was like, you know, finding Gundam stuff was almost like a quest. You know, you had to find like the obscure anime shop. Yeah.
And I think that's why I never really discovered Gundam. I mean, part of it was all the anime that was pushed in my face when I was younger was like Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z. So I had no idea that an anime could be as mature. And it's funny. It's like in the West how cartoons are looked at compared to other countries. Like for me, a cartoon is supposed to skew more younger, be a little goofier, unrealistic. But that's not the case. It's just a medium to tell a story at the end of the day. And so I was really into Star Wars. That was like my main thing. But it was like getting into Gundam, I realized, wow, this is just a more mature Star Wars, a more thoughtful Star Wars, really.
I'm not a Star Wars guy. I heard that there was one movie that they made, maybe a sequel that was really good. They didn't make any more after that.
No, and it's funny because something I've learned with Gundam is, you know, one, not to take continuity seriously. It's almost like ingrained into Japanese culture. It's like, yeah, there can be differences, and it's okay.
It's a good lesson to learn with Gundam because a lot of people get very frustrated over things that ultimately don't matter too much. Continuity does add a quality to a work. It adds kind of your ability to kind of have a larger understanding of a universe. But generally, when you have multiple creators like contributing to a work, it's going to be inevitable that they're going to step on each other from time to time.
Yeah, and typically they will retcon a continuity error to make it how it made sense. Like War in the Pocket did that with like the Kai designs of the GMs. And then sometimes a way that I was reading this interview, it was translated, but they were explaining how sometimes little story beats that might contradict a story beat in another show, that's just more of that representation of that myth, if you will, because it's the story and it's not like, oh, hard and fast, like these are the facts, you know. And it's almost like that lesson of trying to be less on social media or have to argue with everyone. You don't have to have canon always be 100% accurate because you're gonna do it to yourself. Like you're just gonna make yourself go crazy.
And you know, I think that we've talked about that before, is, you know, the idea of coming from a culture of like an oral tradition. You know, you're not going to get the same story beats 100% right from each retelling, which ties in, I think, perfectly to the idea of an actual play or any kind of type of tabletop RPG. I'm sure that AMAC, you can relate to this, where you as the GM have an idea of how things transpired during a particular session, but your players might think something was completely different from the way that you explained it.
Oh, absolutely. There have been times where, 20 episodes down the line, I bring up something and no one remembers it. Or conversely, my players are like, yo, yeah, this happened. And I'm like, did that happen? Did that happen like that? I don't remember that. So, there are even inconsistencies within your own work, especially when you're doing like a weekly show.
Yeah.
That is very dynamic and has to, it can never be truly written. You learn very quick as a DM, you cannot like write everything out. You can write the broad points of things and, how dilemmas that the player will have to face and different outcome possibilities. But you can't really choose which ones you want them to go for. And also, you might think of 4 or 5 different possibilities for a dilemma that you make the players answer. And the players go with something that you just absolutely were not able to foresee. Happens
Option
all
7.
the time. Yeah.
Do you have any, I know this is on the spot. Do you happen to have any good examples?
Oh, man. God. So, people ask me a lot about, I don't want to say a spoiler. Shit. Sorry. Can I say shit? I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's okay. I think after
It's
like
out
a
of the
minute
first
or
5
two,
minutes, right?
yeah, it's something like that. Where
I hope so because I said fuck earlier.
nah, it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't want to say any major spoilers, but
Yeah.
people often assume that we didn't plan a major character death when absolutely we planned it. Like the player was like, I'm tired of playing this character. I want to kind of send him out to pasture. I want to play a new character. I think it'll be dramatic. And so we kind of workshop together, okay, just I'm gonna put you in a situation. Don't try too hard to get out of it.
Oh,
Now,
that's cool.
no one else was in on it.
Oh, even
And
cooler.
other players tried their damnedest to get in the way.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so that's an example. I won't go into super specifics.
Yeah.
No, I mean, and you know what's funny is like, so what I really appreciate about Fetty Scum is that you guys are an actual play. A lot of people will talk about Critical Role and they bring that up on my Discord server, and I'm like, yeah, but it's scripted at this point. Like, they may not. They may rely on dice rolls for some things, but like they have a story beat in mind that it's like we need to hit this mark by the end of the episode every week.
Yeah, they're very dedicated to telling a narrative in a cinematic way.
Exactly.
So
Similarly, I had that experience when I was recording, my first playthrough with G5E. Is it's like one character was like, "Hey, I really want my character to die," and same thing. It was like, "No, I need you to roll, an acrobatics check to see if you can get to him." And it's like, they rolled like an 18 or something. I was like, still fails. Nope, you didn't make it. Sorry, he's dead. Like.
Wow, so that's interesting for me because I'm not too familiar with, I guess, so there is kind of a difference between the traditional tabletop using Dungeons and Dragons rules and the way Feddie Scum is sort of playing it out to where, yeah, there is a gamification, but also, what is it where you'll want to introduce story elements for the sake of making it interesting?
Honestly, in a situation like that where a player is tired of playing their character, and if they came to me, and this is outside of recording, let's say this is me playing my Call of Cthulhu game that I run at work for my baristas, or some other game. If someone comes to me and is like, I'm tired of playing my character, I want them to die, I will just be like, oh, okay, cool, I'll use that. And I will use that in an interesting way because, it is a cooperative experience. You want your players to be having fun. And if they don't want to play a character anymore, then, you should help them write it off.
But by definition, they would not be having fun.
Yeah. And so you at table or at recording, my reaction would have been the same. Now, obviously, because it's a show, there's a lot more pressure to have it be very, satisfying. And so we were like, "Ooh, gotta make sure this one's airtight, baby."
Well, when you're done recording, are you editing a lot? Like sometimes you're like, "Oh, well, let's take this section out because it seems a little awkward for the story."
Oh, so now Fetty Scum is different than a lot of other actual plays. A lot of actual plays, 90% of them, sadly, when you come across them, I say sadly, it's more of a taste thing. Me and Dallas were kind of doing market research, I guess you could call it that. We were lazing around listening to actual plays. And we noticed that a lot of the newer ones or the debut ones would record a room. They would have bad sound. So one of our first commitments were like, let's have good sound. Make sure we have good sound. But they would record a room, and then like if someone had a bathroom break or something like that, they would just keep it going. They wouldn't go back and edit it. You just have 5 minutes of silence. Things like that, where it's just like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
No.
So Dallas's commitment of what he found interesting and as an editor, and his part of that agreement when he was like, hey, do an actual play. And I was like, make it Gundam and I'll do it. And his thing was like, well, let's kind of bridge the gap between audio drama and actual play so I can play around with Foley and play around with music and, if someone, let's say, says a very cool line and they flub it, they mess it up. We re-record it, we put it in there so it actually is delivered correctly. We're nice. Except
That's
for
cool.
me, if I stumble over my words, he leaves that in there. That's funny.
No, that's actually pretty neat, because I've never understood really the behind the scenes of that because there's so many layers to this. It's a game, it's a production that people are seeing at the end of the day. Yeah, that's That's really interesting. And so right now in the description, I have the links to the website and the Twitter. And really, if you're watching this, you can right click, open a new window, so you can still be here. And on the website, I think it's all the options for wherever someone would want to listen, right? Yeah.
Like we have all different listening options. Podcasts just kind of push it everywhere, so it's pretty easy. So and then for the UC content, there's only really one place to start. Well, two now. We did a collection, a compilation of like our first 15 or so episodes. Kind of re-recorded lines, brought it up to a higher quality standard that we have now in terms of that, and made it go through those arcs in basically 2 episodes instead of it being 15, to help with the pacing and effectively onboard you as a fan a bit quicker without going through what we consider kind of the weaker part of the show, where we were still figuring things out as a new podcast who didn't quite know what we were doing.
And even just as a new tabletop group, I mean, that's something that I think a lot of people will run into, where it's like, even when you just pick up a new game, people are still kind of, okay, Cinderella. People will kind of still be feeling out their characters, and they're not quite in the zone, so to speak. So it's a very good idea to kind of, like you said, revisit and kind of polish it up. So now, you did say that the 1 Year War probably has like tons and tons of rich content, and has a good foundation for you to build out a story upon. So would you say that since you are now well into Zeta, the Zeta era, my favorite era, would you say that you're kind of struggling to come up with content, or do you think that you're kind of, because you have such a backlog through going through the Stardust Memory arc and everything, that you kind of have enough of a foundation to build up off of on your own?
I have enough foundation, I believe, and I gave myself a little bit of breathing room. We're starting Zeta in kind of the Advance of Zeta era, and we're going to be exploring some things that neither Advance of Zeta or Zeta kind of explored, that were kind of left, unsampled by any of that content, such as like early beginnings of Karaba, early conflicts and the growth of AU, things like that, without going into spoilers. But we have a wealth of characters that we've created for both the original 79 episode run of the 1 Year War, our Stardust Memory season, which was only like 20 episodes. We have a wealth of characters and backstory to kind of explore on our own as well.
Who does the naming of the characters?
The characters, the player characters are all by them. So the players come up with their own characters.
It's pretty good.
And their own characters' names. I come up with the NPC names.
Okay.
But also, if I see that my Discord is very generous, and anytime they come up with a good Gundam name, they make sure to tell me. And so sometimes I use Gundam names from the Discord.
What was the name of the Quattro Light guy?
Cinco Venus.
Yeah, I loved that.
And that one's all Zach.
I love it. I saw that and I was like, oh, that's perfect. So there's a little bit of humor to it, where like Gundam fans would understand.
Oh, yeah. It's primarily a humorous podcast. And
that's good.
We have a very sophisticated, highbrow sense of humor.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Well, that's cool.
Well, share drama there too, but mostly people listen to us because of funny Gundam show.
Yeah, and
it's easier to make someone cry if you make them laugh first. So that's I think that humor is a very powerful tool. So I appreciate what you do.
Yeah, Steven knows his stuff when it comes to that. That's cool. Anything else you want to add for Fetty Scum, or maybe a call of action to anybody that's listening?
Well, if you haven't listened, just go to the website, fetty-scum.com, and on there's a listen tab. You can go and listen to our origin episode recaps and start your journey there. If you listen to our 1 Year War season, we have a 0083 season now. It's a short, fun little conspiracy set during Operation Stardust. And then also we now have just began our Zeta season. We're going back to the old model of releasing bonus episodes on our Patreon, which is patreon.com/deadsetmedia. So earlier in the end of our season 1 and our season 2, we did a Patreon exclusive season of G Gundam, where we set on in the 20th Gundam fight American preliminaries, and it was just an entire exclusive season. We've now made that public as well, so you can find that on the normal RSS feed. And we're going back to the old model of every month we will release 1 or 2 bonus episodes that will be set in the continuity that we're currently releasing. So all of these current bonus episodes are going to be relating to Zeta Gundam.
And are they side stuff, so you don't need it necessarily, but it adds to it?
We try not to make any of it like required information, but we likely reference it because how I learned to use it in the first season effectively, and how I am definitely approaching it this season, is when you have characters who are improvising together, players that are improvising together, new characters, you have to figure out independent player dynamics with each other, how characters A and B treat each other, how characters C and D treat each other. Outside of the group setting. And so the bonus episodes are going to focus on 2 or 3 characters in different group orientations than they normally are in, to establish different dynamics.
That's
and
neat.
Help them flesh out their characters in different ways. So it's as much for the players themselves as it is for the listeners.
Yeah, it reminds me of watching a sitcom, and then they have 2 characters that normally don't interact, stuck somewhere, and then they have to interact and create. And that could dictate
an isolated event.
So if someone was to join the Patreon, they would have access to the back catalog?
Oh, the entire backlog of all our bonus episodes for season 1, along with any other bonus content we have. We usually do early releases of episodes, 1 if not 2 weeks early, depending on our editing schedule. We also have another podcast that we release called Stress Test, which is a different RPG system every week, unless it's a 2-parter or 3-parter. And we just, as a group of unruly players, play that system and try to break it, basically.
Well, that's awesome. And then I see someone in chat is saying in access to Discord server also.
Oh, yes, of course. You get access to the Discord server.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't think about the Discord a lot. It's a natural extension of myself.
I know.
It's my baby, but I love it.
It's weird how that works. Well, cool. No, thanks for that information. I think this is awesome for anyone that's wanting to get into Gundam and just get some more story stuff. And
yeah, I mean, honestly, when people say hey, what should I watch or listen to start to get into Gundam? It's well, Fetty Scum podcast, obviously, because that's a contained invention.
Oh my god, we've had 2 or 3 people tell us that we were their start into Gundam, and it blows my mind. Blows my mind.
That feels good.
Okay, interesting.
Well, cool. Well, yeah, speaking of other stories, real quick to move on to a little bit of news. Curious on your take on this. So, Anime Expo was this past weekend, and they announced that new Requiem for Vengeance, which that looks badass to me. Did you have any thoughts on that?
The designs look okay enough, in my opinion. Some people were being pretty harsh on the suit designs and the normal suit design. They're kind of generic. They're not going for that retro aesthetic that everyone wants from Gundam. So there are issues taken with that. But my main recommendation is, if you've watched MS Igloo, be as excited for this as you are if someone was like, hey, you want to watch MS Igloo? And that's going to vary from person to person, because some people really like MS Igloo and other people don't.
Yeah,
I have a feeling that this forecast is going to be about the same for this new one.
Yeah, in fact, the reason I like MS Igloo, it's almost like an extension or the visual representation of a Wikipedia article of some background information. Other than that Angel of Death thing, which they could have done without, I liked or Lady of Death, I forget what the name was, but I just like how they go into details of things that kind of don't matter, but for those that like that lore stuff. So I'm actually hoping that's what this does. And
Yeah, like
mean,
I said, if that's what you're looking for, I think you'll probably be pretty happy with it. That's just my guess. It's way too early to
exactly.
It's true. Mobile suit designs, it's like, if you're offended by this kind of modernization of the designs, but you weren't offended by, like, I don't know, Bayverse Transformers, then I have to question your sanity, because, like, at least the Zaku looks like a Zaku. We're not talking about, like, Optimus Prime being a completely different type of truck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but then also they announced the Seed movie that I think people have been waiting for forever. Now, I sort of like Seed. I don't like the original Seed show, but the Destiny I was surprised about. It's not at the top of my list of Gundam, but it's higher than Witch from Mercury. What are your thoughts on that Seed movie? Or do you like Seed at all?
I do not like Seed.
Oh, okay.
I've had a few friends try to get me into it.
It's different.
So we are not going to get Orb Scum, is what you're telling me.
You are not going to get Orb Scum. No. Yeah, I do not care for Seed.
Yeah, it is. It's different than you see. Like, it's one of those things where on my Twitter recently, like, we posted, like, what do you recommend someone to get into Gundam? And I think there's not one answer, because the Gundam is so big. There's so many different things that people could take from it and like, and for me, what Destiny did was add more of that UC-ness, especially the first half, where they had that angsty kind of younger pilot that had his own ideals, and then, like, going against, I like the politicalness of, like, the military industrial complex. I kind of liked that was the central theme, but then it kind of went into the Kira stuff, which I don't care for. And then that was the rest of it. The one thing I did like about Destiny, though, is it seemed to, I've only seen the first Macross series, but I like how they took that, like, idol singer and kind of, like, politicized it, where they had, like, the clone, not really a clone, but someone that looked like her to try to keep the military going. Whereas it really, in reality, she escaped and had her own. I don't know. I find that very interesting, because I could see that happening in the real world, where we look up to a celebrity so much that we'll listen to anything they say, and that could be used by a military or an organization to put forward some stuff. So, but I don't know what to expect from Freedom. It can be trash, and I'll be like, okay.
I hope the Seed fans eat a very nice dinner and enjoy it very much.
Yeah, that's a good positive way to put it. I like it. But yeah, going then toward other stuff that's different. Witch from Mercury. Have you been following it as it's been released?
Oh yeah, I've been following it as it released.
And what are your thoughts on it in general?
So, on a week-to-week basis, I really enjoyed watching it. But so that experience was top tier. Just talking about it, the theory crafting, all that stuff. Always very fun for me. I always enjoyed those parts of airing shows, and shows that kind of cultivate that kind of culture following it and talking about it. And they did a really good job with that. My fear as it got closer and closer to the end was that they're not going to be able to wrap it up in a satisfying way. Yeah. And, Gundam bungles endings fairly regularly. So I was expecting not a great ending. Got a mediocre ending, in my opinion. It's not horrible. Yeah. It's not great. It's okay. Not as bad as it could have been. They could have messed it up far worse.
It was, like, very inoffensive. It was safe.
Yeah. So I think overall, looking back, without a rewatch, obviously, I would need to probably rewatch to get a more solid opinion on it. Overall, like a 7.5, but I feel like the ending brings it down to like a 6. It's out of 10.
Yeah, it was funny for me, because it was the first time that I was. Oh man, there's a lot of commotion going on. Sorry about that, but there was. It was the first time that I was regularly following a Gundam show as it was released, because I had just gotten to Gundam, and I was like, this would be fun to do on my channel, and it was actually exciting, because it was like, okay, what's this episode going to be about, and I'll do a reaction on it, and because I don't really watch anime, I felt like my reaction would be pretty interesting, because it was starting where it was doing that slice of life high school, and I was like, well, that's not what I would watch. But as it started trying to be more Gundam, I realized, wait a minute, I was more interested in, like, the story of the characters for the first time ever in watching something. And because the Gundam aspects to me were very surface level. I mean, the designs of the suits were cool, but there was no depth to like motivation or reasoning. And I think the one thing I think that really, by the end of it, that really cemented that thought was how Prospera was just living a good life when she like caused all this like murder and massacre. And I'm like, what? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, so yeah, that I'm going to do a proper review video on that.
Yeah, I was going to say, Amac, you brought up a good point because, you know, there is a culture around something that's being released live that,
Yeah.
you know, you have to wait a week in order to catch the next episode. And I think that, Adam, you'd probably agree with this, that we've come across people that are just getting into Gundam that basically binge an entire season in like 2 days.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then they don't appreciate it because they were just trying to get through it, you know?
Yes.
And I think that we're part of like this Netflix generation of people that like consume content because they just can't stop consuming it. I think that, you know, I think you used the phrase, give it time to breathe. I think that, you know, watching something on a week to week basis gives it time to breathe, gives you time to come up with fan theories and speculate about things and be, I don't know, be entranced and more enthralled in what you're watching instead of just trying to like rush to the ending.
One of the best examples, I think, in like core UC Gundam of this effect that you're talking about that I've observed is I went back and binged Zeta, and Zeta as a binging spree is not nearly as enjoyable as Zeta as a day-to-day kind of thing. Because it has a lot of soap opera beats. There's a lot of day-to-day drama of like, I wonder what Quattro is going to think about this. What will he do? What will Rakoa say? You know, there's a lot of good, like, juicy soap opera bits from episode to episode that you kind of need to let linger for Zeta's middle not to be painful. As a binge, I feel like Zeta's middle hurts.
Yeah,
experience.
You know, and it's funny because there's a lot of interesting stuff here because when it comes to Netflix and binging shows, that's kind of like what people like to do. In fact, between my wife and I, one of our biggest things is after 2 episodes of something, I'm like, okay, let's stop for today. And she's like, no, we got to finish it. And I'm like, no, let's stop because I can't sometimes I'm mentally wanting to take it in. I'm wanting it to kind of sit in my mind and like think about it and think of little things maybe I didn't catch. And so when I was going through Gundam since 2018, and I still haven't finished all of the shows yet. Mainly, I've gone through all UC except for Turn A, if you count that. You know, I kind of do. But the one thing with Zeta is, I would watch 2 episodes a day, sometimes skip a couple days, watch a couple episodes, sometimes skip a couple days. And the same thing with Double Zeta. And Double Zeta, that would be hard to binge because that kind of suffers from sort of, you know, all that little stuff that goes on. And it's funny, Steven's bringing up a time where in my Discord server, someone joined and how they're watching UC for the first time. And in 3 days, they'd finish a series and be like, I didn't really like it. Why did this happen? Why did that? And it's like, well, you didn't watch it. You didn't take the time. And I crap you not, shit you not, I can say that. I'm a big boy. Sometimes people nowadays are there's got to be a term for side watching where you're like or active watch. I don't know, where you're on your phone
and doing something else. Yeah,
you're like on your phone while it's in the background, and you will not take it in, and you're doing yourself a disservice.
Especially on a Tomino show where there's these small little gestures and you know, small little motions in the character acting that can give you a better idea of the tone of the exchange that's happening. If you miss it, then, well, you didn't get it. You didn't grab it.
And I think one of my favorite examples of Tomino doing that is a silly one, but it's when Quattro in his sunglasses, you see the reflection of Emma. But that's like drawing a reflection in an animation to convey something, I think is a very strong way to go about something. Like, and I think that's a good example right there.
Oh, So I had traction on Twitter and a stupid Kotaku article written about something I posted once where in Zeta there is a very awkward handshake between Camille and Armoro Ray. And I made a shit post of it and it kind of got traction. But that's the perfect example of a Tominoism because it's showing, because the reason why Armoro cannot shake Camille's hand is because Beltorchica's on his side, and he's not willing to push Beltorchica away to shake Camille's hand. And that's what you should take from that exchange.
That's a very good point.
So,
Yes.
I'm glad you brought that up because that is a very strong scene, really, when it's the characters. Yeah. Yeah, good example. Yeah, you know what? If we ever come up with little things like that, we need to like post it on Twitter more often because I love collecting that stuff because, well, and it reminds me of like how much I really like George Lucas for a lot of the things he comes up with. Like I like how he talks about the droids being the humor and not the main characters and I think that's an interesting storytelling thing that's you don't really, it's not like being told that that's how they're doing it. But that's what's going on. That's how you can take the other characters seriously in the world. And then, yeah, tying back to like Haro being the R2-D2, you know, in a way. Yeah, you know, I think, that's near the end of the show. I don't know if there's anything else to bring up. Anything else you want to say, plug? Anything?
I am A_Mac_0079 on Twitter if Twitter still exists next week. If not, you can find me other places, I guess, maybe.
Well, the good news is you can only read 800 tweets a day, right? So that's like, you know, you can't binge Twitter the way that you can binge Gundam.
Pretty good point.
I don't know who actually needs to read 800 tweets a day, honestly.
No.
Like,
yeah. It's not healthy.
It's definitely not healthy, but if you're there are some times where I get into conversations with people, not arguments, conversations.
Okay.
And you'd be surprised how quickly you go through 800 tweets going through response chains and stuff like that. They add up.
I feel one day an older generation is going to look at Twitter the way we look at people that smoke cigarettes. You know what I mean? It's like, what are you doing to yourself? I think that with phones too. Someone else, I'm not taking credit for that. Someone else said that one day.
I think like the aging smoker, I will take my dignity, walk outside of your restaurant, and light one up.
Hey, but you know what? Hey, there's always the case of the guy that's lived past 100 and he smokes every day. So you know, it's not a hard and fast rule. So
no.
Anyway. Well, yeah, that just about does it. Thanks for everyone in the chat. I know I didn't call out everyone's name today, but I really appreciate you guys being here. This has been a lot of fun. Having a guest like this has been awesome. Check out the links below for all that stuff. I mean, it's more Gundam goodness and storytelling that everyone likes. So, until next time, see y'all later.
Bye.